Rock Island is certainly not alone in taking those punches from the pandemic. It is a problem throughout the Quad Cities, of course, as we all know. Businesses in downtown Moline are a lot quieter because nothing is happening at the Tax Slayer Center. Those events are big revenue generators for the city government, not to mention the spillover nearby businesses see before and after those sporting events and concerts. That toll is now in the millions for Moline city government. Every local government feels the impact from the pandemic. Some are weathering the storm better than others. Moline is seeing some of the good and some of the bad. Moline Mayor Acri joins us for a conversation this morning. Always good to talk with you. Let's start with the pandemic. What are the worst problems you see that it's bringing to Moline?
Well, I mean, overall, it's causing a lot of distress to our community. Our businesses are suffering, our individual residents are suffering. We're all really troubled by the situation.
Where are businesses struggling the most? Is it the downtown, the John Deere corridor, someplace else in the city?
Well, I think that, it's pretty obvious that it's our restaurants and bars that have been most impacted by the mitigation orders from the state of Illinois. And what they're sacrificing is something that the community needs to recognize and come along beside those businesses to help support them for what they're doing for the rest of us.
Has the city been able to quantify the impact the pandemic's had on the city revenue so far?
Yeah, we are off, well, I would say overall about $8 million, but we have had some additional revenues come in the form of support. So we've had CARES funding, CURES funding, and then we've received some rebuild infrastructure funds. And so overall, we've had to make an adjustment in our expenditures this year of about $5 million.
That's significant. Now, a couple of weeks ago, City Council approved your plan to make up to $300,000 in grant money available to struggling bars and restaurants. That would make up to $5,000 available to each of them. What's the response been so far?
I think that we recognize as a municipality that that's not enough, but it is our effort to try to support those businesses. They're in survival mode right now, and if we can filter some of the money that we're getting in support to them, that's better for all of us. We need those businesses to survive this pandemic so that they're on the other side of it for our local economy. The money that we used for that program actually came from the federal level, and it came as reimbursement money for cities' expenditures that weren't previously budgeted. And so the money that's going out is structured in a unique way to meet those requirements. So it's actually a procurement from the city to those individual businesses for the work that they're doing, either to convert their business to takeout or to temporarily close down their business.
How useful is the money you've seen from the federal government so far?
Oh, it's been incredibly helpful, but it's not enough. I think that we're all concerned about the services that are being provided to our community, make sure that those services are secure, as well as the support that we can offer through that type of funding to help not only our individual residents stay connected to their homes, but also our businesses to prosper.
You mentioned that money is helpful but not enough. What impact does Moline feel from this stalemate in Washington, D.C. on that next round of pandemic relief?
Well, I think that we're all frustrated. I mean, we recognize how difficult it is to get legislation through conflicted bodies, but it's very much needed right now. As soon as we get our hands on it, we are pushing it out in programs that we think are best suited to support our community, and we will continue to do that as funds come available.
So let's say there is that next federal stimulus package that I think a lot of people want it by the end of the year. How important is it for local governments to have more flexibility in how to spend that money?
Well, you're either going to have to come in with programs that are set up in a way that allows flexibility, or the individual municipalities need to be clever and creative on how they set up their programming, like our procurement program. I mean, it took us a bit to figure out how to make that happen, but we got it figured out, and we'll overcome any barriers that come with that funding to make sure it gets to the right place.
Let's say you get that money. What priorities do you have for it? I guess you talk about setting up programs, being able to to use it fairly quickly or efficiently, what are those priorities? What are those programs that you see being able to work?
Well, something that I see as more and more of an issue is neighborhood stabilization. We're very concerned about keeping people connected to their homes. We don't want to see people moving from one place to another because that is financially devastating to some families. And so we want to try to keep them in place where they're at so they have good housing. And we also want to make sure that people stay connected to their jobs. So however we can do that with our local small businesses to help them keep those employees working is a good thing for all of us.
Would you see possibility expanding that current $5,000 limit for other businesses going forward if you're able to get more money?
Yeah, I would see programs like that in the future. Something that I think that we need to think about is when we get through the pandemic, making sure that we have money in reserves to help support the restarts of those businesses. So if they don't have any money to buy inventory, they're not going to be able to open back up. So they've got to be able to cash flow their business, and we need to be there for them even at the end of the pandemic when they're ready to get started again.
We see the struggles in tax revenue specifically from the pandemic for governments. You talked about losing $8 million and actually net of $5 million, I guess, so far. Yeah, Moline is moving forward with a budget plan to lower the overall tax levy, and it could translate into a cut in the property tax rate in the city. Some property will be worth more, so the results could be mixed in terms of whether home and commercial property owners end up paying a little more or less in their annual tax bill, depending on the formula. But how is the city actually able to lower the levy while maintaining services in this economy when so many are struggling? That seems to be quite a feat.
And I think it's in recognition that so many are struggling that we have made the decision to do that. So early in the pandemic, when we were looking at reduced revenues into the municipality, we had some choices to make. You know, either we were going to increase taxes, increase fees to bridge that gap, or we were going to make difficult decisions and thoughtful decisions on how to adjust our budget to meet that revenue. So this current council made the commitment our community that we were not going to push that burden onto their shoulders. We feel like the community members are stressed enough by this situation, and so we wanted to do our part by living within our means and not exploiting their limited resources moving forward. So something that needs to be understood is that real estate tax is only one of the revenue sources to the city, and it's an important revenue source. We are looking at a $15.8 million levy in 2021. That is down from our $15.9 million levy. And so when people talk about what the tax rate is going to be in 2021, it really is a guess because we've got the county's estimate of what the assessed value is going to be in 2021, but all of the appeals have not been completed, and so you don't really know. I mean, we're guessing that value is going to be up, but because we don't know that, what we're focused on is how much money we're asking from that revenue source overall, and that's the reduction. We would expect our tax rate to also reduce, but that's yet to be seen.
These are definitely challenging times. Moline Mayor Stephanie Acri, thanks for your time. Now, our question of the week: what are your biggest concerns for local governments during the pandemic? Send your answer by email to fortherecord@whbf.com or respond to this post on Facebook at the Local 4 News WHBF TV page or on my page.